Tonight, Donald Trump's bold and perilous proclamation.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too.
The president's message to Palestinians, what he said about American boots on the ground in Gaza, and the critical meeting with his Israeli counterpart at the White House. Mourning the Aga Khan, the spiritual leader for millions of Ismaili Muslims around the world.
An extraordinarily compassionate global leader.
His philanthropic legacy and the deep connection to Canada spanning decades. What we know about the suspicious deaths on a Saskatchewan First Nation. Making sure a temporary tariff truce with the U.S. sticks, and where Canadians who canceled their American trips are turning to instead. And the inseparable, life-changing bond.
Before she got the doll, she was already warming up to the idea of her being different.
Meet the inspiring little girl, conquering big challenges with a companion by her side.
It just means everything.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening. We begin tonight with the U.S. President's dramatic declaration on the future of Gaza and a remarkable shift in American foreign policy. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin on what Donald Trump said in front of the first foreign leader to visit the White House in Trump's second term.
Protesters greeted Israel's prime minister as he arrived at the White House to meet President Donald Trump.
Everybody's demanding one thing, very simple, peace. And he wants peace also.
Speaking to reporters, Trump suggested 2 million Palestinians should move from Gaza permanently, calling their home a demolition site after months of war between Israel and Hamas.
I would like to see Jordan. I'd like to see Egypt take some look. The Gaza thing has not worked. It's never worked. The whole place is demolished. It's unsafe. It's unsanitary.
Even as hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have returned to Gaza to see what's left, Trump floated the idea that Jordan or Egypt would take all of them. So far, Arab countries have rejected such shocking proposals to resettle an entire population. Trump calls it a humanitarian gesture, insisting Palestinians have no alternative.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it.
He has a different idea.
Benjamin Netanyahu praised the idea, facing political pressure back home as war-weary Israelis demand the return of the remaining hostages and an end to the conflict that has cost so many lives. Earlier, Trump signed an executive order to apply what he calls maximum pressure on Iran, more sanctions. His goal?
They cannot have a nuclear weapon. With me, it's very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
And if Iran tries to target him over the U.S. killing of an Iranian general deemed a terrorist in 2020, Trump warned, don't try it.
I've left instructions. If they do it, they get obliterated. There won't be anything left.
A lot of tough talk and a stunning shift in U.S. policy. President Trump says he will do whatever is necessary, not ruling out the military, adding Gaza to the growing list of territories he wants to take over. Omar?
Joy Malbin in Washington tonight. Millions of Ismaili Muslims around the world, including here in this country, are mourning the loss of their spiritual leader tonight. But the Aga Khan's impact extended far beyond his own community. In 2009, he received honorary Canadian citizenship, a rare distinction that includes Nelson Mandela, Malala Yousafzai, and Raoul Wallenberg. CTV's Heather Wright on the incredible life and legacy of a man the United Nations is calling tonight a bridge builder between cultures and faiths.
He was barely an adult when he became the 49th Imam of Ismaili Muslims.
The decision came as a shock.
Just 20 years old, the Aga Khan would go on to lead the world's 15 million Ismailis for nearly 7 decades, fusing religion, entrepreneurship, and philanthropy.
An Imam in Islam is responsible for the security of the people who refer to him. He's responsible for the interpretation of faith, and he's responsible for their quality of life.
Born Prince Karim Al Husseini, the Aga Khan was in many ways a head of state without a country. He inherited and amassed great personal wealth, continuing the family tradition of horse breeding while also investing in real estate and tourism. But he also poured millions into helping people in the poorest parts of the world, building hospitals, schools, and infrastructure in 18 countries. In 1972, when Ugandan dictator Idi Amin banished Asians from Uganda, the Aga Khan persuaded then Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau to welcome thousands of Ismailis to Canada. The Aga Khan maintained deep ties to this country and was made an honorary citizen in 2010. An Olympic athlete himself, he congratulated Canada on its gold medals in men's and women's hockey when he addressed Parliament in 2014.
As an ex-player myself, I was hoping you would require your honorary citizens to join your team. I'm convinced that the Dalai Lama and I would have been a formidable defense.
Even after the death of Pierre Trudeau in 2000, he remained close to the Trudeau family, a bond that led, in part, to the current Prime Minister apologizing for accepting a trip to the Aga Khan's private island in 2017, which was deemed a conflict of interest. Today, Justin Trudeau said the Aga Khan will be greatly missed.
His Highness the Aga Khan was an extraordinarily compassionate global leader, a man of vision, of faith, and of incredible generosity.
One of the Aga Khan's legacies is this museum here in Toronto. In announcing his death, the Aga Khan Foundation said a successor will be announced soon, once the will is read out to family and senior leaders. Omar.
An inspiration to so many. Heather Wright at the Aga Khan Museum in Toronto tonight. Overseas investigators in Sweden are on the scene of the worst school shooting in the country's history. Police are still working on the exact number of fatalities, but say around 10 people were killed, including the prime suspect. The shooting happened at an adult education center on a campus that also has schools for children. Police say the motive is not clear. Back here at home, a quadruple homicide is under investigation after a grisly discovery on a Saskatchewan First Nation. CTV's Donovan Mace is near the scene for us tonight. And Donovan, what can you tell us about what happened?
Yeah, a difficult and emotional day for the Carry the Kettle Nakota Nation, where police are confirming 4 people found dead under what's being called suspicious circumstances. The investigation also putting multiple nearby communities on notice as police investigated reports of a man pointing a gun at people on the Zagame Anishinaabe First Nation, over a 40-minute drive away from the crime scene. Police say it's unknown if this incident is connected to the deaths on Carry the Kettle, but residents on Zagame and Cowessess First Nation were all told to stay indoors as police searched for suspects. Back at Carry the Kettle, Chief Scott Deschape taking to social media saying this incident spawned from a break-in in the northern part of the community, before asking all reading to please pray for our nation and our families. Fellow File Hills Tribal Council Cowessess responding to the tragedy saying, when one of our nations are suffering, we are all impacted, and we pull together to do what is necessary to help carry this sorrow as well as pathways to a solution. Now, police are not releasing the names of the individuals involved as of now, and with this investigation ongoing, an increased police presence is expected to continue on both Carry the Kettle and Zagame Anishinaabe nations. Donovan May, CTV News, near Carry the Kettle, Nakota Nation.
In neighboring Manitoba, Ottawa's border security plan is in action a day after Donald Trump hit pause on tariffs in exchange for a clampdown on illegal immigration and fentanyl heading south. CTV's Mike Couture on the promise and the delivery.
A Canadian border guard shows off a machine that can detect highly toxic drugs. Stopping the flow of fentanyl was the ask from the U.S., but Canada is also focused on results beyond that.
We will keep working until those tariffs are off the table altogether.
Maybe that's possible, and maybe it's not possible.
U.S. President Donald Trump praised his North American neighbors for bolstering the borders, but he warned the reprieve is only temporary.
Well, there's a short-term freeze with Mexico, as you know, and with Canada. But they've agreed to be very, very strong on the border.
In addition to the $1.3 billion already pledged, Canada is adding $200 million to fight organized crime. A senior government source tells CTV News Canadian officials also came up with a new role.
Fentanyl czar,
who will serve as the main interlocutor between the Canadian and U.S. governments.
In the last year of tracking, U.S. border agents seized less than 20 kilograms of fentanyl at our shared border. Compare that to 9,500 kilograms seized at the border with Mexico. But for Canada to avoid 25% tariffs permanently, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith believes we need to address other economic irritants.
The digital media tax, the banking industry, telecom, supply management, those keep coming up, but those can only be resolved in the context of a broader renegotiation.
One that could have to happen earlier than 2026, when renegotiations of the Canada-US-Mexico trade agreement are scheduled to start. It's why the federal government is pushing for a Team Canada approach on all fronts.
What we know is the only ones that will be able to convince President Trump are Americans themselves. So we need to continue the pressure to make sure that we lobby Washington.
Those efforts continue, with federal ministers visiting D.C. this week and all premiers doing the same next week. Omar.
All right, Michael Couture in Ottawa. China swiftly retaliated against the U.S. after new 10% tariffs on Chinese products went into effect today. Beijing announced its own tariffs on imports from the U.S., 15% on coal and liquefied natural gas. They also slapped 10% on crude oil and farm machinery, along with certain cars and trucks. The response, which kicks in on Monday, targets $14 billion worth of U.S. goods. The patriotic push for consumers to boycott American goods and strictly buy Canadian has proven to be complicated. CTV's Adrian Gobriel tells us why.
Canada has had a pretty sweet arrangement with American beverage brands who've chosen to produce and bottle their product on Canadian soil for Canadian consumers.
The soft drink industry is almost exclusively made here in Canada. The snacks business is almost exclusively made here in Canada.
Though with Trump's tariff threats, a push to buy Canadian has taken hold. Lists like this have been widely shared on social media, outlining American brands to avoid at the grocery store. Though many of the American products listed are actually made in Canada by Canadians.
We need these plants. We need the capital investment.
If we were to only buy Canadian brands exclusively, what could be the outcome?
Loss of jobs, an impact on our agricultural community because they are not going to have a market to sell their goods to.
There's a lengthy list of American brands produced in Canada employing Canadians. Just two examples include Kraft peanut butter and Lay's potato chips. It's something that's now top of mind for many shoppers.
I'd probably buy Canadian when I could.
I'm going to make more of an effort to buy Canadian, but I would support a company that employs Canadians.
To the consumer, do your research, read the labels if you wish, but make an informed decision and not an emotional decision.
If consumers were to only focus on purchasing Canadian brands, food product experts warn it could have unintended consequences for the country's economy. Omar.
All right, Adrian, thank you. Coming up.
We're not mad at all Americans, we're mad at Trump.
Why Canadian travelers are rethinking their routes. Plus, a new honor for an old Canadian hero. Donald Trump's tariff threat has led to a surge in buying Canadian, but some are choosing to travel Canadian too. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth now on the changing itineraries.
After traveling from Ontario to enjoy the Florida sun every winter since 2001, this year Bob Bloomer is staying home.
With the stuff that Trump has been pulling for the last month, well, for years actually, but now that he's in a position to do more about it, it's I just can't justify going down there right now.
But the door is open to one day returning to the Sunshine State.
We're not mad at all Americans, we're mad at Trump.
Bloomer is not alone. A new survey shows 62% of Maritimers will travel less to the U.S. because of Donald Trump's policies.
People either were worried about the tariffs and the economic impact, not wanting to spend their dollars in the U.S., but they're also worried about the the difference between the currencies and dropping Canadian dollar.
Tourism operators see an opening. They hope Canadians will spend their money closer to home.
The U.S. used to be our number one market. Now Canada is our number one market. And I anticipate from bookings that we're seeing lately that the Canadian business is going to continue to increase.
As for any possible negative impact on U.S. travel to Canada,
I do anticipate that, there's going to be some ups and downs.
Here in Halifax, each year, close to 200 cruise ships visit this port. Many of those bookings have already been sold, which means those visitors are locked in. Elaine Elston is still planning her yearly trip from Delaware to Canada.
I absolutely will come because some of our best friends are up there. So we're down here with them now, and we'll go back up there in the summertime.
Elston says she loves to visit and wants to do her part to repair any damage to the Canada-U.S. relationship. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
And on the U.S. side, CTV's Genevieve Beauchemin traveled to a small town in Maryland to find out what Americans are saying about the tariff fight.
A Neil Young tune plays out on the streets of historic Annapolis, Maryland, a nod to the longtime allies to the north.
Do you want us to be the 51st state?
I don't think you want to be, and I don't think there should be a quote-unquote hostile takeover either.
This is a port of call for international sailors, and many here say they understand the importance of global relations.
They've agreed to be very, very strong on the border.
And some here just don't buy U.S. President Donald Trump's claims of victory over Canada.
When all is said and done, he doesn't get anything. He gets what's already been offered. So I think tariffs are a waste of time.
Some worry that will bruise the relationship with the neighbors to the north. The nice and polite Canadians now booing their national anthem.
Booing the national anthem? That pains me. It's tough to see. But I think we can get by it because I do think Donald Trump is going to do a moonwalk on the tariffs.
I can understand why Canada and Canadians would be upset, eh?
Good one. Others disagree, suggesting Trump's threats boosted border security, improving the safety of their families.
I think a great many Americans appreciate that. I'm not sure how the Canadians. I'm not from there. Look, it's a marriage. It's not always going to be perfect.
But in the end, say many in this venerable city, history will win out. Canadian-American bonds forged generations ago will outlast this moment. Of course, that relationship could be tested, particularly if tariffs do come into effect down the road. Genevieve Beauchemin, CTV News, Annapolis, Maryland.
Still ahead, a Canadian soccer superstar announces his future in style.
2030. Much of my throne, this city been worthy. Sign that deal, now the game looks sturdy. Red kid on my back, and the goals come early. Champions made, we don't break no mercy. Trophy stacked high, every win feeling worthy. Speeding down the wing, vision getting blurry. 2030, I'm still riding.
Canadian soccer star Alfonso Davies announced his new contract extension in a pretty creative way.
I ain't going anywhere. We here to stay, baby. We here to stay.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. I'm still here 2030. Much of my throne, this city been worthy. Sign that deal, now the game looks sturdy.
The 24-year-old decided to stay with the German powerhouse Bayern Munich for another 5 years. He's already won 5 league titles and 1 Champions League title with the club. Multiple talents. Well, today is World Cancer Day, and the man who inspired millions of Canadians to raise money in the fight against the disease has been recognized with a new honor. A powerful short film called Finish It shows Terry Fox running his 1980 Marathon of Hope using advanced technology that replicates the original footage. It also features an unreleased version of the song Courage by the Tragically Hip. The film was unveiled today and also kicks off the 45th anniversary celebrations of his iconic run. Still ahead, a little girl's priceless reaction to the gift that's a perfect match.
Amidst the chaos of this room full of kids is a little girl who's facing some very big challenges.
Funky little girl, a lot of spunk.
Her name is Shoshana. She's just under 2 years old, and like most children her age, she's learning how her body works. But Shoshana's body is different than many of those around her.
She uses 2 prosthetics.
Which means she's not just learning how to sit, stand, walk, and kick, but she's doing so with artificial legs.
At first, she wouldn't put them on. So even within the first couple weeks, she would start asking for her leggies and was more comfortable putting them on.
Knowing Shoshana loves dolls, staff at Kayla's Children's Center in Vaughan decided to enlist the services of A Step Ahead Prosthetics, a U.S. company that takes American Girl dolls and outfits them with prosthetics similar to the child. Now Shoshana and baby are inseparable.
It's life-changing. Before she got the doll, she was already warming up to the idea of, you know, her being different and her having to work a little bit harder to do the things that normal kids do. But when she got the doll, you could see that she was happier to do it, that she wanted to do it. And it just means everything. Good job, baby. Good.
Part of what she's doing with baby is watching and learning. The doll takes part in and helps demonstrate many of Shoshana's physiotherapy exercises.
I see in her eyes that she gets it, right? And that she gets that the doll looks like her, and the other toys don't.
Together, the pair work on balance and mobility, both things that have improved since the arrival of baby.
The children learn through play. It teaches them about themselves, it teaches them about their environment. So I think it really nurtures her emotionally that there's this beautiful doll that's perfect, just like she's perfect.
Her family is so happy with how happy she is. It's so obvious how happy she is when she's playing with baby.
And whether she's playing or learning, Shoshana now has someone similar by her side as she navigates life with artificial limbs.
For her to have one that looks like her, that represents her, and one that she can call her own, it is a dream come true.
Scott Lightfoot, CTV News.
I believe that civil society is one of the most powerful forces in our time, one that will become an increasingly universal influence, engulfing more countries, influencing, reshaping, and sometimes even replacing ineffective regimes. And I also believe that civil society around the world should be vigorously encouraged and wisely nurtured by those who have made it work most successfully. Canada, first amongst all.